My name is Charles Flaherty. I'm representing Kona Hawaiian Civic Club. Um, this matter, as you know, had come up before with regard to public access on the Kohala Kai development as far as our public access plan. The issue was whether or not the Alaloa Trail, the ancient Alaloa Trail, should be preserved. And the problem was whether or not it should be recognized on the property rather than moved to the shoreline. I just wanted to reiterate, it's interesting that today is only 2 days from the beginning of the Makahiki season. And the Makahiki season was the time of Lono, and the very beginning, it begins when Makali'i Hiki, when the Pleiades rise here on Hawaii Island. And at that time, a phase of spiritual cleansing began. Tributes to the king were placed on Ahu at the boundaries, the Ahapua'a boundaries, and a procession began at the Hikiau Heiau in Kealakekua and went around the island collecting the tributes till they got there. Then a time of games would begin, and then there was a time when there was a canoe, a wa'a, that went out, and tributes to Lono were sent out into the ocean. And then finally the chief had to go out onto the canoe and come back on shore and face spears, and had to deflect the spears in order to show that he was worthy to proceed with into the spring and the rest of the year, leading the people. The Alaloa Trail was essential to this process because that was the trail upon which they traveled around the island. It was also a means of transportation, so even as time went along, it was finally recognized in 1892 as a public highway in the Public Highways Act of 1892. And so that's why this particular development and this issue in this development is so important, is because this is a constitutionally protected trail. It's recognized by law, and yet so far, as far as I'm aware, and it may have changed since our last meeting, but the public access plan that was approved did not acknowledge specifically the trail and did not place an easement that I'm aware of recognizing the trail on the property. So if, and I don't know if this has happened, but I've seen that lots are being sold. That must mean that there was a final subdivision approval given. If it was given without the easement for the trail, that would have been illegal approval given by the county. If lots are being sold without this easement, I'll wrap up. If lots are being sold without this easement, then the purchaser of the lot owner is being given an imperfect title, basically, because there's an undisclosed title defect to this trail. So I hope that that situation is not developed. I'd be very interested to see what has progressed since our last meeting on this. Very good to see you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, if you all recall, we dealt with this a couple of years ago, it seems, and at that time, a lot of the testimony is, well, we're about to get this done, and really the county doesn't have to be involved because it's close, and it still hasn't been finalized. So, I'm just trying to, like, what's going on, and to what extent can we be an enzyme or litmus? What is the holdup, and what are the issues?
I guess back in 2015, we were here, and I remember stating to the council members at that time that Kohala Kai would cooperate with the National Park Service in creating a conservation easement on the area of the property that was above the buffer for the Alaloa Trail. We also at that time made a commitment to create an archaeological easement on the property on the Alaloa Trail, and that has been submitted to Land Court. I sent an email to Margaret and to Eric the other day when I received this notice of this meeting that had been sent in, and that we were waiting for Land Court to approve the easement of the Alaloa on the trail. So contrary to what Mr. Flaherty had said earlier, the Alaloa Trail has been put on this property as an easement in perpetuity. So I just want everyone to know that we have fulfilled our obligation in that regard. There was also the public access easement that was granted to the county and accepted by the county, has also been recorded on the property. So both of the matters that were in, that were supposed to be done have been completed. At the meeting that Eric attended, we all were here, we agreed that we would work cooperatively to create a conservation easement for the area between the Alaloa Trail to the shoreline that would be granted to the National Park Service.
Right.
And the developer created that easement, drafted a initial draft, and submitted it to National Park Service back in 2014. And we've been waiting for comments from the National Park Service since then to respond. There have been other conversations that I've had with Eric over the last few years as to whether Kohala would grant that easement to the Alakahakai Trail Association, and that has not been decided upon by either party. The original offer from Kohala and what was promised was an easement to be granted to the National Park Service, and that is the preference of the developer because it provides, I think, more of a long-term solution to the, what was presented.
Just to update all of you, we received, actually when the easement was first, the draft was given to us, we received guidance from our lands office in San Francisco that it may be less cumbersome to have this conservation easement granted to more like a private entity rather than a government entity because of all our due diligence that we would have needed to do. And so we thought, well, the Trail Association would be a good candidate for that, our Trail Association, because that's our partner in the community. And they were also in the process of closing on an acquisition from EWM just a few miles north of Kohala at a place called Kaiholena. And so we had, the Trail Association had received funding and was trying to get more funding in order to close on the property. And what we decided to do was to close on that first and then move on to the conservation easement. And so that, we just didn't want to complicate things, and so we made that decision. And so they closed, that was closed last year. And since then, the association has been having some issues with respect to its capacity to be able to negotiate that easement. It reviewed it, and so it's still have not decided as to whether or not the association wants to accept that conservation easement. So what we decided to do was go back to the Park Service and say, hey, we're looking at now just let the Park Service take the easement. Can we get your cooperation on that? We went back to our regional office, and we got the green light, the approval from them to do that. And so that's kind of like where we're at now. So we are highly motivated to want to now negotiate an easement with EWM, with Kohala between the National Park Service and EWM. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay.